Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of Cosmos Foundation, let me welcome you to this very important and timely dialogue on relations between Bangladesh and UK, a prognosis for the future, and this will be the second series of the Ambassador Lecture. I'm Nabila Rahman, and I would personally like to thank each of you for taking the time to attend this extraordinary gathering, especially our distinguished speakers and panelists. It has been very important for Cosmos Foundation to organize the dialogue series as we continue to grow and adapt. Some of you will have already attended previous installments on various issues ranging from relations between Bangladesh and the European Union, Bangladesh and India, Bangladesh and China, to the Rohingya crisis, to Baul music and philosophy. Cosmos Foundation is always open to new ideas that can help transform society and lead to a better future. And your support along this journey is extremely important for us. So without further delay, let me thank each of you again for enriching the occasion with your presence. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to the chairman of the Cosmos Foundation, Mr. Anita Lacan, to deliver the opening remarks.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to ask everybody to put their cell phone on either silent mode or switch off. In fact, the Honorable Foreign Secretary was supposed to come, but unfortunately he had to travel, and I'm sure that in our future events we will definitely have him or somebody else from the Foreign Ministry. I'm delighted to be able to bid you all a very warm welcome to yet another edition of our Ambassadors Lecture Series. Your presence here is an evidence of a continued support for this initiative. You will recall that we initiated this program recently, and I'm happy to say that we began with a big bang. Our first symposium with the head of the European Union delegation, Ambassador Renier Tering, as a keynote speaker was a great success, winning praise in all relevant quarters. Not just for the way it brought together so many like-minded people on a Saturday morning, but also the impact it had on the national discourse. The way the audience engaged itself in the discussion was a big part of that. It all made this second coming rather imperative. Today, I'm very pleased to have as our second distinguished speaker for the series none other than the High Commissioner of the United Kingdom, His Excellency Mr. Robert Chatterton Dixon, who, as you all know, is a new arrival on our shores. So let me first of all wish him and his family a very warm welcome to Bangladesh and wish him a most enjoyable and rewarding tour of your duty. His records speaks of a distinguished career in the service of Her Majesty, and his responsibilities here have spanned at least 3 continents, apart from the FCO in London. The experience and the knowledge and wisdom he has gathered through it all will doubtless stand him in good stead for his current assignment. There are few countries in the world that share the emotional ties that Britain and Bengal and now Bangladeshis share. We are bound by cricket and culture, language and literature, common vision and values that complement our political and economic relations. It is true that the interest of the world is riveted on Britain because of the impending Brexit. But no matter what the future holds for the UK and Europe, Britain and Bangladesh, and the British and the Bangladeshis, are likely to continue with their connection as before, largely unimpacted in a broad sense. Long past Brexit, or soft Brexit, or hard Brexit, or indeed no Brexit at all, whatever our friends eventually will decide upon. I should be wanting in my duties, were I not to say how beholden I am to our chair today, Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Chaudhry, former Foreign Affairs Advisor and now Principal Fellow at the Institute of South Asian Studies at the University of Singapore, for his continued unflinching support to our efforts. His think tank, the Institute ISAS in Singapore, is one of the world's most premier research institutions devoted to the study of our region. It has been our privilege at Cosmos to collaborate on a number of joint projects, both in Dhaka and in Singapore. In fact, I intend to be able to announce shortly several ambitious joint schemes that would be of great interest to the discerning intellects of our audience and well-wishers. This will include forums on thematic issues as well as interactions with a number of high-profile individuals whose contributions are helping shape the destiny of our societies and our future. Accordingly, on Saturday, 6th morning, we shall have a globally renowned legal luminary, Mr. Dan Sheffett, to speak on fake news and hate speech, causes and consequences, and its impact on our democratic system. And the Honorable Minister for Law would be our chief guest. All of you are cordially invited to attend. With these few words, I shall pass the microphone to Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry to chair and conduct our proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, I should be frightfully remiss were I to begin without adequately applauding Chairman Anatullah Khan and Cosmos. It is for their rendering this Ambassadors Lecture Series a signature event in town. As some of you are aware, this is a replication of a similar program that I run in Singapore in my think tank ISAS, with which Cosmos, as you have heard, has been collaborating for some time. I'm delighted that we should have today for our speaker the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom, High Commissioner Robert Chatterton Dixon. He's a diplomat of prodigious parts, having read history at Magdalen College, Cambridge, and then having served in many capitals of the world, including the Foreign Office in London. And now we're very pleased that he's with us in Dhaka. I bid him, as I do you all, a very warm welcome. Normally in these symposia, we tend to place our topic against the global matrix for deeper comprehension. This normally implies quick tour d'horizon of the prevalent global situation. Today, this tour would have to be much quicker because we are somewhat pressed for time. There's some global phenomena that mark our current times. One is what the journalist Robert Kaplan has called the elegant decline of the sole superpower United States. Fareed Zakaria accompanies this by what he calls the rise of the rest, particularly that of Asia. Now, this decline is happening partly because of because America's own isolationist predilections, and partly because of President Donald Trump's penchant for America First policy. Just as in physics, in politics too, nature hates vacuum. So, in this space, there is a creeping occupation by the China of Xi Jinping with the Mega Belt Road Initiative, the BRI, inspired by Xi's vision of what in Mandarin is called Zhangumang, meaning China Dream. The challenge by a rising power of to an existing or of an existing one opens up the risk of what is known as the Thucydides syndrome. The Greek historian by that name has famously observed that when Athens grew strong, there was great fear in Sparta, and war became inevitable. However, happily in this case, conflict is avoidable given the mutual economic dependence between China and America. A second major phenomena involves a nation featured in our discussions today, the UK, and the circumstances of its departure from the European Union, or Brexit, as we call it by. Countries of the world, including Bangladesh, would need to recalibrate relations with, if there is to be a post-Brexit Britain, though, as also with Europe, though the received wisdom is that the impact of our bilateral relations will not be significant. For the ties between Bangladesh and Britain, the bonds that link the rivers Thames and Teesta are historic and enduring. British influence in the past shaped the so-called Bengal Renaissance, the intellectual efflorescence of the middle class, the Bhadralok. From Britain we acquired the English language, a significant tool in this digital era, the passion for cricket, as also the ritual afternoon tea that have lent such cheer to the lives of our young and old. On the reverse side, Bangladeshi writers, amidst ample significant contribution to the new English literature, politicians of Bangladeshi origin now sit in both houses of the parliament, and the most favored English pub fare is chicken tandoori masala. At a personal level, I cannot but help feel a modicum of pride in all this, understandingly because of being a Sylheti. Time was when the most prominent content of our bilateral relations was development cooperation, which is a euphemism for foreign aid. But that's largely passé. At ISAS in Singapore, we have begun to view Bangladesh as a rising economic powerhouse, following the Asian tigers who have gone before in a flying geese paradigm. There is need to reset bilateral relations in this new context, taking cognizance of the remarkable changes in the social and economic scene. Bangladesh's potentials, not just in the blue economy, though also that, but also in the Indo-Pacific maritime milieu, is burgeoning. There is already some thoughts floating if post-Brexit trade can be dealt with under newer understandings in areas of trade that would be mutually beneficial, such as market access, in the area of market access. This would be a present-day reincarnation of what we hope will be a rejuvenated Commonwealth, of the old imperial preference. Now, we were talking about it earlier this morning. I mean, this, of course, dates back to Joseph Chamberlain, and Rubana was telling me this is long in the early 20th century. However, what one could be looking to is repackaging, retooling, and revamping it in concord with our times, among parties perhaps more equal now than then. These are only some ideas, but I sincerely believe them to be ideas whose time, to paraphrase Victor Hugo, has surely come. I thank you. Okay, so now we get on to the business. It's my pleasure to offer the floor.
Well, good morning, Your Excellencies. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Dr. Chowdhury, and thank you very much, Mr. Ayatollah Khan, for providing such a wonderful platform for diplomats and others to meet and discuss issues of global significance. The Cosmos platform, I know, is renowned both for the quality and for the significance of its debates, and I'm very proud and pleased to be able to take part in a Cosmos event a very short time after I arrive. So the first thing I should say is that I'm absolutely delighted to have this job here in Bangladesh as British High Commissioner. I first came here a decade ago when I was part of a ministerial delegation who visited Bangladesh during the monsoon season. And I was struck by two things during that first visit. The first was that the traffic could be an impediment to getting around Dhaka, and clearly that has not changed very much. But I was also struck by the quality of the people that we met and of the discussions that we had with them. And I thought from then on that this was a country in which I would like one day to serve. And I mentioned this idea to my wife, who some years ago, many years ago now, spent 6 months in Mymensingh working for Care International and had a real affection herself for Bangladesh, and she agreed that this was a posting that we should keep our eye on for the future. And I'm very pleased that 10 years on, having in the meantime served as Consul General in Chicago, Deputy Ambassador in Sharjah in Kabul, and Foreign Policy Director in the Cabinet Office, here I am at last in Dhaka, where I arrived 4 weeks ago, and thanks to the efforts of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, was able to present my credentials to the President within 48 hours of my arrival. And I'm proud to be here as the custodian of a really important relationship between our two countries. Britain was present at the creation of Bangladesh, and I was reminded of this last week when I had the pleasure for the first time of meeting the Honourable Prime Minister. And as it happened, the venue for that meeting was an Independence Day exhibition, and we were standing in front of a picture of Bangabandhu, her father, meeting the then British Prime Minister Edward Heath in Downing Street at the beginning of 1972. And he was en route from his period of captivity in Pakistan to take up the leadership of the newly independent Bangladesh. And he came to London first. And that partnership with Britain has been part of the independent Bangladeshi story ever since. And it's a story of remarkable Bangladeshi success. Huge development achievements, rapid economic growth, and the pending transition to middle income status. And as partners in that success, Britain's relationship with Bangladesh is both deep and broad. What I'd like to do is set out a little bit how the relationship exists in the current moment, and then come on to the exam question about the prognosis for how it might look in the future. Because we have an exceptional amount in this relationship to work with. We have a diaspora 600,000 strong of Bangladeshis living in the UK, making an exceptional contribution to our national life. We have 3 elected members of the British Parliament of Bangladeshi origin. We have diplomats, including one of my predecessors as High Commissioner in Dhaka, and one of the current members of my team, Abu Zaki, who's sitting here in the audience. And this week we had the announcement that Professor Tipu Aziz, who is a British Bangladeshi working at Oxford University, has been awarded Britain's highest award for neurosurgery. And we look forward, in addition to the resident Bangladeshi population, to welcoming thousands more Bangladeshis to cheer on the Tigers during this summer's Cricket World Cup, including, of course, for the game against England, which takes place in Cardiff on the 8th of June. And it won't be a secret to you to know that I will be cheering very strongly for the other side. But the second aspect has been a very strong British development programme, one of the largest in the world, which still, despite the increasing sophistication of the Bangladeshi economy, invests over £160 million a year in supporting development here, and has provided £120 million in emergency response for the crisis caused by the expulsion of the Rohingyas from Myanmar. And there's really no substitute, I think, for seeing what aid can do at first hand. So I was in the Rohingya camps in Cox's Bazar last weekend, seeing the extraordinary contribution that Bangladesh, working with international partners, has made to helping to cope with the immediate aftermath of that crisis. And then I went to Rangpur in northwest Bangladesh earlier this week to see a rather different aspect of the partnership in action. And I have to say it is very moving to sit on the floor of a camp or village house and to hear of the difference that world-leading Bangladeshi NGOs like BRAC, combined with UK funding, have made to the lives of really poor people, both in the Rohingya situation but also more deeply here in Bangladesh. And the success that Bangladesh has enjoyed in the last 50 years is, of course, entirely Bangladesh's own, but I'm pleased and proud that it's been enabled by help from the UK. The third thing that's worth mentioning, and I see as raw material to work on over the next few years in my role as High Commissioner, is the extraordinarily deep cultural relationship. That, of course, has many aspects, but it's particularly manifested here in Dhaka by the British Council, who've been at their home on the campus of Dhaka University since 1951, and played a part in the events of 1971 when Dhaka University was the crucible of the independence movement. And the councils still today make an exceptional and innovative contribution to education, English language teaching and culture here. I think increasingly on the basis of equality that you, Dr. Chowdhury, mentioned in your opening remarks. The fourth major aspect of the relationship is the presence of UK corporations, including HSBC, Standard Chartered, Unilever and British American Tobacco. And I think the point about that corporate presence is that it does two things. The first is that it pays some of the largest tax bills in the country in an economy which historically has a relatively low tax take. The international companies, including the four that I mentioned, play a very significant role. But the second thing is that these companies are part of the linkage between Bangladesh, its growing economy, and the world economy. So they have a critical role to play. And finally, and fifth, I'd mention a significant and growing security relationship, which includes high-level officer training in both directions, drawing on our part on the very strong contribution that Bangladesh has made to UN peacekeeping and the expertise that Bangladesh has in operating in the UN context, but also our being able to offer some of the world-class training at institutions like the Royal College of Defence Studies. But underneath that is also a lot of shared work to tackle the threat that is posed to both of our countries by radicalisation and extremism. So if you add all of those five elements together, there's a huge amount already happening between our countries. So the question then becomes, what do we do next? What is the prognosis for the future? And what I'd like to do this morning is to offer three specific areas where I think we can do even more as Bangladesh transitions to a middle-income country over the next few years, and the Britain-Bangladesh partnership enters its second half-century. And I think what I'd like to do is throw out three areas, not as a comprehensive overview, but as examples of where I think we can really work effectively together. First of all, and as a context for this, this audience definitely doesn't need me to tell you that Brexit has turned out not to be a straightforward process. It's been the most difficult, I think, thing that we have grappled with politically, at least since the Second World War. And we're watching Parliament wrestle still today with one of the most complex and consequential issues it's ever had to face. And the only observation I'd make from this perspective is that what we're seeing is the messy process of democracy in action, but it's much better to be having fevered, heated debates in Parliament than violence in the streets, and there's no suggestion that that political crisis is going to spill out into anything worse than that. Nobody yet knows how Brexit is going to be resolved. It's a remarkable story which has taken many twists and turns and catches all of us almost daily by surprise. But stepping back from it, it's clear that as we leave the European Union in whatever form, and we as global Britain seize new opportunities, we will be looking particularly to the fast-growing economies of South Asia for new partnerships. And that very much includes Bangladesh as the world's 8th largest country by population and an economy growing, we hope this year, at up to 8%. And what we'll be looking to do is to forge a much stronger political partnership where the UK and Bangladesh can work together to tackle global challenges and deliver global opportunities. And just to give you an example of what that means in practice, we see ourselves working together at the UN and within the Commonwealth, building on the things that we're already doing on issues such as climate change, which is a defining challenge for our times, and I know presents some particular challenges here in Bangladesh. And it's an issue on which we're already working together ahead of the UN Climate Summit this September. And as part of that, we very much hope, as I told the Prime Minister when I met her more formally the day before yesterday, we will be hoping for Bangladeshi support for our bid to host the COP26 conference in London in 2020. But we see this wider political partnership also as being a vehicle by which we can support free, open and international trade, which is clearly critical to both of our economies, critical to an export-led economy like Bangladesh, but also critical to the UK as one of the world's great free trading nations. And that's part of wider work together to support a rules-based international system. Dr. Chowdhury is absolutely right to say that the international system is under pressure at the moment, and we see a bilateral relationship with like-minded countries like Bangladesh as a really critical part of trying to ensure that that international establishment, which has worked so well for all of us since 1945, is preserved and developed as we go ahead. And as I mentioned, we're already working closely together to tackle threats, both on extremism and instability. And it's very important that we continue to develop those ties, not all of them in the public sphere, on which our safety at both ends of the chain depends. And as part of that, we would like to work with Bangladesh to support human rights, public integrity, good governance and fair elections, which we're clear provide the best guarantee for long-term stability in any country. So there's a huge amount that we can do, I think, to develop a political relationship between equals in ways which serve the interests of both sides in this very fast-growing part of the world. So that's the first prognosis that I'd make, a real opportunity to step into the political space in an active, positive and specific way. But I think there's also, and this is my second point, a potential for a much increased contribution to each other's prosperity. Currently, the Bangladesh Bank figures show that in Britain we buy around £4 billion of goods from Bangladesh every year. Sorry, $4 billion of goods from Bangladesh each year. And Bangladesh buys in return from us around $430 million in return. So what we have is a trade surplus. Bangladesh has a trade surplus with the UK roughly on a factor of 10 to 1. And I don't think you have to be Donald Trump or to accept his worldview to feel that a more balanced trade relationship between our two countries would be a good thing for both sides. And I think it's fortunate that the maturing of the Bangladeshi economy in fact should have the effect of opening up space for just the sort of higher end consumer goods and services at which Britain excels. And I was fortunate to have lunch just before I came to Bangladesh with my Bangladeshi opposite number, the very energetic and esteemed Ms. Saida Muna Tasneem, the Bangladeshi High Commissioner in London. And we agreed that one of the things that we would aim to do together would be to try to increase the awareness among British companies about the opportunities for them to come to Bangladesh to trade and invest in a way which will benefit the economies at both ends. And one thing I should say in this forum is that I think those efforts to get British companies to realise that a country of 165 million actual or potential consumers, a country that is growing at 8% a year, ought to be an extremely attractive proposition for business. And I think it already is, but I think it would be a more attractive proposition, particularly for businesses that haven't yet explored the potential here, if Bangladesh had a higher rating than its current 176 out of 190 in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business rankings. I really do think that a serious effort to address some of the issues that make business in Bangladesh difficult would be a really useful way to attract the private capital, the private sector involvement that the Bangladeshi economy is going to need as it matures and becomes a larger player on the world stage. And there are already some promising signs. Last week I was at the public launch of AstraZeneca, a major UK-Swedish multinational's presence here in Bangladesh. They're putting a first toe into the market here. It's great to have them. And I'm sure that better business climate, allied to continued economic growth of 6 to 8%, will be a really compelling argument that Saida Muna Tasneem and I can make to British companies about why they should be exploring the potential of this remarkable and interesting market. And as part of that, our development offer to Bangladesh is going to change. As we observe, Bangladesh is not in any way now an aid-dependent economy, but we will be shifting what I think will still be a significant UK development programme here, more towards technical assistance with economic and governance reform which is needed to address issues like, as I said, ease of doing business and making Bangladesh an attractive destination for British companies, international companies and private capital. So I think that economic dimension is going to be a second really important dimension of my work here as High Commissioner. And there's one third specific sector that I'd like to highlight, which in a way links the two previous ones, which is higher education. I'm very struck constantly by the fact that Bangladesh's human capital is probably its strongest asset as a country. There's an enormous potential here, with 44 million children in school, but the key to unlocking that potential and making the most of it is education. And in an increasingly globalized and competitive world, the key to education is making sure that young Bangladeshis have the ability to draw on the very best higher education available. British universities are very keen to open this market, to enter this market. At the moment there are barriers to their doing so. We have made clear to the government our hope that it will be possible to open up the Bangladeshi higher education market in a way that will enable British higher education providers, British universities, to operate here in a way which will, we hope, enable young Bangladeshis to benefit from some of the world-class education that Britain can offer in Bangladesh. We think that will be a real contribution as I said, to the development of the human capital in Bangladesh, and it's something that we are very keen to encourage. And it's something that we will be following up, a theme that we will be following up among our contacts at ministerial level and in my conversations with members of the Bangladeshi government. So I think if you put all those three things together, the political relationship, which I think has huge potential as Bangladesh assumes its rightful place as a developing giant on the world stage, the economic and commercial potential of that relationship in both directions, but I hope particularly one that British companies will want to take advantage of, and the role that Britain can play in making sure that Bangladesh is able to make the very best of its human potential. I think all of that adds up to a really compelling package, which I look forward to representing and promoting here in Bangladesh, not least during what promises to be a huge party as we celebrate Bangladesh's 50th birthday the year after next. And I'm delighted, proud, privileged to be here as British High Commissioner at this exciting moment in the history of both our countries, and I look forward to an energetic, probably tiring, but certainly exciting 3 years to come. Thank you very much.
That we are a bit pressed for time, so I will now open the floor to questions, answers, comments, and I would urge that they be short. You identify yourself and your affiliation, and I recognize the first two hands that have gone up, Rubana, then Mr. Khan, and High Commissioner Masood, and Masood. So these four in this order.
Excellencies, Cosmos, of course. Thank you very much for having us here. The reference to imperial preference, as evoked by Dr. Chaudhry, is very relevant. It's just that since we're decolonized now, it probably has to be revamped in another way. And it started way back in 1903 and then carried through 1920s and finally.
A little louder, if you mind.
So the imperial preference is an old concept, but it can be revamped, as you said. Post-Brexit, we really don't know. We're actually mired in uncertainty. We're not sure what's going to happen. Irrespective of that, the reference to $4 billion trade, actually RMG, ready-made garment sector, is only around $2 billion. So and it could grow. It could grow. The market in England is very soft right now. And we're not, and the orders are dipping. And RMG, ready-made garment sector, actually supports almost 83% of the country's economy, so we can't just do away with it. However, the British High Commissioner very kindly mentioned our friend Moona Tasneem in London, who's a dynamic High Commissioner. It's just that, there are two places in the world where we suffer from the most severe image deficits. One is London, another is, of course, Stockholm. In Sweden and United Kingdom are two places where we need lobbyists actually to address our image deficits. So we would actually request your intervention in helping us get there, because when Clean Clothes Campaign start lining up in front of the Bangladesh High Commission, which they always do, it becomes difficult for us. So we need to tell our side of the positive stories as well. Also about the ease of doing business, the 176th, the reference to it, the current government has already at least done 5 or 6 meetings only to address the points. So we are kind of hoping that we'll be able to reduce at least 30 points with that regard. And as Excellency, you would also agree that, very humbly, that ease of doing business is also a highly politically motivated ranking, considering what happened to Chile a couple of years ago. So I guess that you would not attach too much importance to that. However, there are key factors in ease of doing business which Bangladesh is trying to address, especially on the Logistic Performance Index, where we really rank low. So infrastructure is a huge issue for us, but apart from that, the rest is kind of working fine. In terms of higher education, Excellency, you've mentioned higher education assistance. I would urge you to kindly also think about primary education. That's key for us. And I make this reference to Estonia over and over again. Estonia, being so small, still is a star performer right now, only because math and coding are actually taken up from grade 1. So this is something that Bangladesh probably also needs to do, because with the 4th Industrial Revolution, we are moving at quite a speed, and we would need to address these issues immediately. So reskilling is something that your government could help us with. also by focusing on primary education. And of course, in terms of ready-made garment sector, the trade preference cannot cease. No matter what happens to you, you still need to look after us in terms of preference. And no matter how big we grow and how strong we are, we would still need to go from strength to strength with your assistance and support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Banahak. What we'll do, High Commissioner, is we'll take these 4 questions, comments, you will react, and then I'll open the floor again. So I recognize now Mr. Salahuddin Qasim Khan. You'll give your affiliation, please.
I'm chairman of one of the older British companies here, Coats, Bangladesh, and we are manufacturing sewing thread for the RMG sector. You'll be happy to know, Excellency, we are proposing to double our capacity because of the growth in the RMG sector. But we would like to see more FDI from the UK, because in the past we have seen FDI sort of overfly Bangladesh to countries like Malaysia and the ASEAN countries. But I think we have a lot to offer on an equal basis, you know. So that would be my, that if you could have sectoral delegations looking at specific sectors for investment from the UK, and we take similar delegations to the UK for serious investment proposals. Secondly, higher education, Mr. Banahak, I think also mentioned it. Every year we are remitting about $10 billion. We earn $15 billion from unskilled workers, but for professionals and managerial class of people, $10 billion. So we need to make investments in tertiary education, particularly management institutions. We have a proposal from to set up a South Asian Institute of Management. UNDP has shown interest. I spoke to one of your previous development ministers whether Britain could get involved. We're also speaking to the EU, but I think we would like to see what you have done in Malaysia, like Nottingham University and other Reading. They have set up campuses. Why not Bangladesh? Because in the 60s, we had Malaysian students come to Bangladesh when Dhaka University was known as the Oxford of the East. But our quality of education has really dropped, and only through offshore campuses of the leading British universities we can bring up the quality. The other issue also Mr. Rubana talked about is upskilling. And here I must recognize the part played by DFID in focusing on the persons with disability segment. We have nearly 10% of our population, 16 million, who are outside the national economic activity. If you can gradually bring them into the workforce, we could add $2 billion to our national economy. So these were the 2 points I wanted to make, and let me see. I think that's all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Salahuddin. Serena Mohsen.
Thank you very much indeed. I thank the Chief Speaker, the British High Commissioner, for his presentation. I have 2 points to make. The first point is I'm not very sure whether a soft Brexit or a hard Brexit would impact on Bangladesh. I mean, I'm watching, listening to the BBC, and now that Theresa May has gone with Corbyn, what happens, whether it would have any impact on us. Another matter I would like to say is this. Before, when Britain joined the EU, the Commonwealth countries were not so developed. Now they're very developed. And we export 80% of your ready-made garments and knitwear. But what I find lacking is that the Commonwealth Secretariat, which was so vibrant, so large, and with greater funding, has become so small, with so little funding, that we are unable to provide technical assistance, we are unable to provide forums for banking, forums for business, forums for education, Commonwealth scholarships, scholarships for secondary students, or sending teachers here to improve the quality of education to meet the requirements of the labor market. So I do not know why the Commonwealth, which is so loved by the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen, has become such a thin organization. Last year when I went to the AGM, I was so sad. I must say, this must be given some priority. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, shouldn't that be a shared responsibility of all the Commonwealth countries, though?
I mean, the ABC countries can provide, so should other countries.
Okay. Masood?
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. And the one question that I have, in fact, just wanted to thank our new British High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Masood Khan, and I'm Deputy Managing Director of Cosmos Group. And my question relates to sort of the post-Brexit relationship, that would take place between UK and Bangladesh. And, as Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry suggested that, there's already some thinking amongst the Commonwealth countries about, post-Brexit and how it would affect them and how they would be able to continue this relationship. And so my question is, in your knowledge, is there any thinking or discussion in your relevant circles, or in the British government, any sort of discussion regarding this sort of interest or academia? So that's the question, yeah.
Thank you. High Commissioner, might I ask you to react to these questions, and then we'll open it.
Thank you very much. That's a fascinating and pretty wide-ranging group of questions. If I take them sort of not in the order they were answered, but in the answer that seems to me I might be able to make them segue a bit. There's a really important point around foreign direct investment, and I think this comes back actually to the heart, I think, of what we want to try and do. Some figures I was shown the other day say that Vietnam receives roughly $30 billion of foreign direct investment every year, and Bangladesh receives about $2 billion. And I think this does come to a point that was made about Bangladesh's image issue. I do think there is an image problem for Bangladesh. I don't think it's particular to the UK. I think it's wider than that. And it's very striking. When I started preparing actually for the interview that I needed to do in order to apply for the job of High Commissioner here within our system, I was really struck by the way in which I think the Bangladesh story, which is one of, as I said, of huge volume. The absolute numbers in Bangladesh are very large, 165 million people, the 8th largest country in the world, and 6 to 8% growth, reliably delivered over many years, macroeconomic stability, which has existed under both parties, and I think a really interesting sort of economic model which has fused a government which has been quite enabling, an NGO sector which is really one of the best in the world at bringing on human capital, and a private sector which admittedly operates in a difficult environment but is still nonetheless really vibrant and has had the ability, particularly through ready-made garments, but in other sectors as well. I can't quite understand, to be honest, why that is not more widely appreciated internationally. I do think there's a real point around image. And although I absolutely accept that the ease of doing business ladder is one that you can game, I have been accredited in other countries where the government was actually quite good at this and managed to bounce up the ladder quite a bit by doing things that didn't actually change things very much on the ground. And I'm not suggesting that that would be a good thing for Bangladesh to do, but I do think that a real effort to address some of the basic issues around sort of dealing with the government, issues around infrastructure, issues around institutional effectiveness, I think that could make a real difference. And if companies saw that there was a government that was committed to doing those things and therefore to increasing or raising the country's status on the ladder of ease of doing business, which is a crude metric but one that is very public, I do think you could help to address some of the issues around the image of the country, and people would then begin to understand the really positive story, the fantastically positive story, which is the real economic story here. And I think 2021 could be a really interesting opportunity to do that, provided that it's done in a way that is inclusive and tells the positive story and doesn't become too mired in any other sort of recrimination. On the other points that were made, tertiary education is clearly crucial. As I said, there are British universities who are very interested in doing exactly here what they're doing in Malaysia. At the moment, they aren't allowed to do that. They're banging on the door. The door is closed. We would like the door to be opened. So we are having conversations with the government about exactly that issue. I think some quite helpful, I have received in return, in reply to my suggestion that this would be a good thing to do, some, I think, quite helpful suggestions from Bangladeshi interlocutors about the way in which this might happen. So I think it's a conversation about zones of potential agreement rather than one about principles. And I hope that we've got ministers coming to Bangladesh in the next few weeks, and I hope that those conversations may take us further in that direction, because I really do think it's a win for our universities, clearly, who would like to operate in this really exciting market, but it would also, I think, be a big win for young Bangladeshis who would therefore have access here in Bangladesh to the world-class education that British institutions can provide. On the other 2 points, I mean, Brexit, yes. I mean, Brexit is extremely difficult. I'm very conscious that my French colleague is sitting just down the table. Whatever happens on Brexit, it's obviously crucial that we continue to have a productive relationship with all of our European friends and colleagues. And the Prime Minister was clear early in the process that that's her objective. But obviously what Brexit does do is open us up to pursue different sorts of partnerships with others around the world. We're very keen to avoid imperial paradigms. That is not a helpful way in which this discussion within the UK takes place, because Brexit and global Britain are meant to be forward-looking, not backward-looking. But I think what we've been clear is that if we do end up in the highly undesirable situation of no deal Brexit, then we will be going to a zero tariff position, which we hope will protect the ability of countries like Bangladesh, who currently have a very strong ability to export into us as a member of the European Union. We will be planning that that ability will be protected. So in the narrow context of Brexit deal, no deal, we will be aiming to take unilateral measures which will protect the position of Bangladeshi exporters, because clearly it's very important to both sides that we continue to have that. As to what might be possible longer term, well, we're still looking at that, but the Commonwealth will clearly be a part of our political relationship with the wider world, and I absolutely accept that the Commonwealth is an institution which has got a bit threadbare, and one of the reasons that we consciously stepped back into the Commonwealth space very publicly last year by hosting the Heads of Government meeting in 2018 was an attempt to try and revive the institution and make it relevant to young people. I think there is a point that the Commonwealth has a slightly retro, backward-looking flavour sometimes, and we are doing everything we can here in Bangladesh to try and open it up to a new audience. And actually I hosted an invitation, an event for 80 young people at my residence last week, where we looked at the role that the Commonwealth can play on things like inclusion and disability, on climate change, and on media freedom, all of which are very important, and for all of which the Commonwealth is a very good vehicle. So anyone in this audience who has bright ideas about how we can better present the Commonwealth, particularly to young Bangladeshis, do please let me know, because we are very much in the market for those things, recognising, of course, that Britain and Bangladesh are equal partners in this enterprise, and that it needs to be driven from both sides. It's not a unique responsibility for the UK, it's for everybody to make maximum use of this wonderful platform that the Commonwealth provides.
Yeah, that is actually what we mean by the revamped, retooled Commonwealth. Okay, I have 4 more on my list now. We'll go across the channel momentarily to the Ambassador of France. Then we have the Ambassador of France. I have Shayan Khan, yes. I have Mubina Asaf, and I have Tawhid Feroz. Okay, Ambassador will have to leave within 15 minutes, so 20 minutes, so brief, very brief.
So I'm happy indeed to not speak because I didn't ask for the floor.
Oh, you didn't ask for the floor?
I can do that as well.
I
Or just have a very brief comment.
Oh,
no, I didn't ask, but nevertheless, I'll do that very brief comment.
Then you are invited, Ambassador.
Because I'm a convinced Europeanist.
Yes,
so I see with a lot of regret what's going on with the Brexit and the way it's handled in Great Britain in connection with us. And like for any divorce, there should be scope for better discussion and handling. Now, having said that, I'm still wondering, and that's really a question, nothing for criticism. I'm still wondering what has been an impeachment or a problem for the relationship of UK with Bangladesh or any other country in the Commonwealth before Brexit that would change tomorrow, day after Brexit. I think this particular affection and warmth that exists with some countries in the Commonwealth has no reason to have changed after 73 or has no big reason to change after 2019 or whenever that would happen. But that's really a personal question. And again, I insist, I didn't request for the floor. So now
Anyway.
I just wish my colleague a very good mission here. And I hope the cooperation between our missions, post or pre-Brexit, will remain very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for reacting to the public demand to take the floor.
Yes. I'm Shahan Khan. I'm with Takakuri and UNB. Just want to extend my welcome to the High Commissioner first. I'm just coming from reading a profile of him in the Times, where he is hailed as a new breed of diplomats. So my expectations are heightened. But it was from 14 years ago, so I don't know if it still applies. My question would be regarding, I noticed that at your first meeting with the Prime Minister, a discussion on the Rohingya issue predominated mostly. So even though this would be about the relationship with Bangladesh, I would, this is also very important, I think, in the relationship right now, although in the short term. So I think there are expectations that certain countries have of Britain, especially countries that they had colonized in the past, because we had adopted their laws even. And in the Rohingya crisis, I'm just going to cut to the chase now. In the Rohingya crisis, I personally regard the 1982 citizenship law in Myanmar as the crux of the problem. And since it is to do with something with the law, and Myanmar adopted British law, I wonder if Britain is keen to impress upon Myanmar, because I think the only people who have a chance with that is Britain. They also have the relationship with Aung San Suu Kyi, which goes back a long time. So would Britain work on trying to impress upon Myanmar that the citizenship law has to change, that it doesn't belong in the modern era? A three-grade citizenship law is not something that we can even palliate anymore. Also, a second very short question is just occasioned by the knowledge that London is going to host the next conference of the parties of the climate change conference. That would be great, of course. I think we'll all be there. Climate change is a very important issue for Bangladesh. But also, it just popped in my mind, would you be able to bring back Donald Trump to the climate change topic?
Everyone will need to cut to the chase very, very quickly. So we will have Rubina Asaf, Tawhid Feroz, and General Zahir. Yeah. Rubina, very quick. If you raise your hand, then the person can identify you and give you the microphone.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency and Cosmos. Thank you for inviting us and giving us this opportunity. To your point of the foreign direct investment, we are one of the oldest and largest foreign direct British investments in Bangladesh. We've been here for around 108 years. And I think to your point that the existing MNCs can really play a very supportive role in attracting other businesses into this country. I just want to make 2 points. That having said that we have had a great journey here in Bangladesh, we do have challenges. And if you could just highlight whenever you're having your meetings with the government stakeholders, that there should be consistency in fiscal policies. That is very important. There has to be pragmatic. There has to be a level of stability and a long-term sustainable fiscal policy. That's one. And the other would be there should not be any discriminatory policies and unfairness in when you talk about the local businesses versus the MNCs. That is very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mubina Asaf. Tawhid Feroz, and then General Zahir.
Good morning. I'm General Zahir. I am wholly a UK man myself because I have done all my military professional studies and also my higher studies in UK. I did my staff course in British Army Staff College. I did my master's in King's College London. Then I did my higher professional studies in Royal College of Defence Studies. So I'm a thoroughly a UK-made man. in this context, I'm very thankful to UK and the Commonwealth. But since the time is short, I will make 3 specific propositions. Number 1 is about education cooperation. As you speak of that, it needs to be looked at. Especially, we need technical and vocational education, where we lack very, very much, and also primary education, which has been already highlighted. So I would like that in your future, what I would say, interaction with the government, I think I would like to see your contribution in technical and vocational education for Bangladesh. Next is Bangladesh is looking for investment in high-tech parks, but we have built many high-tech parks, but the response is very little. But I would request you to look into investment in this area, which we need very badly. Last of all, I would say that we are beneficiaries of the Commonwealth scholarship on this. I'm a shivling scholar myself. But my daughter went to do undergrad education, and we had to pay through our nose, really. It's very expensive, and I'm sure this another who is here, who has been also. As we see today, there are lots of students from Bangladesh go for undergrad education in UK. But they get good education, no doubt, value for money, but then it is expensive. So my suggestion was that to make Commonwealth and UK relationship more relevant to the next generation, could you introduce a sort of scholarship within that scheme? About 25% scholarship given to Bangladesh students who go for undergrad education in UK. Under UK or Shivling scholarship scheme or Commonwealth scheme, that would be very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very cut and dried, learning from the general. That's all must do. Tawhid? Okay.
Good morning. Hi, Commissioner. Welcome to Bangladesh. As we all know, Britain is currently passing a deadlock over Brexit. But there's been quite a lot of reports in the international media that after Brexit happens, Europeans working in Britain, the number of Europeans working in Britain will fall. So is there a chance that after Brexit, when it happens, that employment market is going to open for people from other countries, especially from South Asia? Or is there a chance for skilled Bangladeshis to work in the British market, let's say in IT sector or in private sector or business or in academia? Is there any chance for that?
Okay, next 5 minutes of glory, all yours, High Commissioner.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, some more really interesting and challenging questions. If I could take the Rohingyas, which is obviously a major issue. I mean, I absolutely agree with the premise. I mean, the point is that this is a problem that's made in, I'm going to use the words Myanmar and Burma interchangeably. Please apologize. It's not in any way a colonial throwback. It's just the way I think about it. But this is a problem made in Burma. It's one that had nothing to do with Bangladesh, but Bangladesh has been unbelievably generous and effective in its response to this, really over successive waves going back for decades, but obviously particularly in the influx that started in August of 2017. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the problem is the way that Burma treats its citizens, or treats people who actually it doesn't regard as its citizens. And it is extraordinary that you have a citizenship law, which I think I'm right in saying provides for 136, recognizes 136 minorities, but doesn't recognize the Rohingyas. So clearly there is a basic injustice there, which periodically flares up and did so particularly badly in the summer of the year before last. And we are very clear that, I mean, it's clearly this is a problem. It's a problem for the Rohingyas, and I've seen them for myself in the camps last weekend. This is not a way that anybody should have to spend their lives. It's obviously a problem for Bangladesh, with twice as many people flooding over the border as exist in the host community, and it's obviously causing increasing strains there. But it's also, we would argue, a problem for Burma, because there had been a hope that Burma, under its new civilian government, with Aung San Suu Kyi playing a role as first chancellor, that Burma would emerge onto the international stage as a sort of, if you like, a fully credible member of the international community. And clearly this issue, the fact that they have participated in the enormous act effectively of ethnic cleansing, has undermined that. So we think that there is probably room for a conversation with Burma about how it can create conditions for the Rohingyas to return as part of a wider reform of its citizenship laws. So we don't yet have, we acknowledge that this is something where the UK has a role. We've had a prominent role in the Security Council. Clearly the problem in the Security Council is that Burma is heavily backed by another member. So we are doing some thinking about whether there are other ways in which we can have a conversation which will enable the Rohingyas to return. And we aren't yet in a position to sort of put forward solid proposals, but we are having the conversation internally about ways in which we can help everybody to resolve this very difficult problem, which, as I said, is bad for everybody, including, we would argue very strongly, the government of Burma. So that's the Rohingyas, working very hard on it. In the meantime, DFID has provided already £130 million worth of humanitarian support, and we will be providing more. So we are heavily involved in the humanitarian support, and it is very inspiring to see the way in which that humanitarian support is being delivered when you're on the ground in the camps. On climate, yes, climate change is a crucial issue. It's obviously particularly important to Bangladesh. I think this is a really promising partnership for us. We have bid for COP26. We haven't yet got it. I very much hope that we will. I'm assured that Bangladesh is likely to support us. I will be making sure that that does actually happen by bothering everybody until they confirm that it will. There's a very interesting point about whether President Trump will come. He will be quite busy in 2020, presumably seeking re-election, so he may have other things he needs to do. What I would note, I spent 3 years living in Chicago, so I am familiar with the sort of wider US. And I think the really interesting thing about the US and climate change is that if you ignore what's being said at federal government level, actually really interesting work is going on at state level, particularly in places like California, but also in the Midwest. If you drive from Chicago to Indianapolis, you pass the biggest wind farm I've ever seen, gigantic, mile after mile in that flat landscape of wind turbines. So at the practical and state level, enormously exciting and innovative things are happening in the US. So I think the point is to sort of find ways of drawing that energy, enthusiasm, practicality into the conversation, and not necessarily letting it get bogged down in a sort of rather sterile political dispute would be the way that I would perhaps suggest to my bosses that they might like to frame this if we're fortunate enough to get COP26 for London. Just three other points on inward investment. Absolutely. The point is, though, I think, is that if you look at the British companies that are here, I suspect that BAT is not alone in having been here for over 100 years. HSBC, Standard Chartered, Unilever, these are all very, very excellent British corporate names, but they've all been here a long time, and they do very good business here, and they find this an excellent environment because they're used to it. And I think the point is that the challenge now is to bring in more names. Very good to have AstraZeneca here. I see a steady stream of other companies who are thinking about Bangladesh, but there's no question that a public ways of addressing publicly the issues that clearly surround ease of doing business here would be the best thing that the government can do to work with us and with representatives in other capitals to make sure that the Bangladeshi opportunity is properly appreciated. So I will be continuing to bang on about this, because I do think that for an economy growing at 8%, that is an odd place to be in that very public, maybe slightly, what's the right word, maybe not a completely representative model, but a really public metric which everyone will keep looking at. On education, absolutely. I'm very keen to, as I said, to sort of do more to boost the educational links. I'm constantly struck by the extraordinary degree to which that educational link already represents a really strong bond between our countries. I had a meeting the other day with Goa Rizvi, the Prime Minister's Foreign Affairs advisor, who said that he taught at Oxford for 23 years, then had a midlife crisis and went to Harvard. But clearly there's no substitute for those 23 years he spent at Oxford. That is a really organic part of the relationship, and I'm sure there are many people in this room who've been educated in the UK. And I think, as I said, the challenge for us now is to make that incredible world-class educational opportunity available to the wider number of people in Bangladesh without necessarily forcing them to go all the way to the UK with all the trouble and expense that involves to access those tremendously good UK universities. So I'm very keen, as I said, to extend the UK educational offer here in Bangladesh. And I think that would also pick up the point about vocational education, because some of the universities offer courses which are not highly theoretical, or these are courses which are quite practically based, particularly in things like business studies, IT, things like that. So I really do think that higher education point is a win-win. And I absolutely take the point on scholarships. We have actually doubled our achieving scholarships. So in the context of Bangladesh, it's still not a large number, but it does mean that we are trying to scoop up some of the very best of young people and give them the full scholarship package in the UK, as well as making the best of UK education available here in Bangladesh. And finally, the point that was raised last about opportunities in the UK market. It is already true, of course, that young, skilled people from all around the world are already accessing the UK market. And I think it's likely that we will be making a larger number of those opportunities available after Brexit, because if our economy is going to continue to grow after the end of free movement from Europe, then we're going to need to continue to access talent from around the world. But what we are clear is that it's going to be skills based. So if you're someone like if you're someone with very high level skills, whether it's medicine, IT, those fields where there are shortages, then you will be very well placed. But it would be wrong, I think, to pretend that the UK is going to be looking for extensive unskilled migration, because I don't think we are. But we are going to be, as we already are, but even more so after Brexit, a market for highly skilled people from around the world to come and offer their talents and work and live in the UK.
Thank you very much. Let's give our speaker a hand. I'm a little glad that we're short of time, because that enables me to waive the privilege of the chair of having to sum up the discussions, which would be an impossible task to do in any way. It was so rich. Thank you very much. Thank you and thank you all for your participation. And each one of you has made a contribution. This will all be on record, and therefore we shall all be able to have a review of it in our time. Anyway, we'll let you go now, but not without the privilege of your being given a token of appreciation. Yes. Okay, you will receive a token of appreciation, and only then you can leave. Thank you very much, High Commissioner.
Wow, good. Thank you very much. Yeah. Should I? Between two roses. There we go. Yes.
It's the other way around, but anyway. No,
thank you very much. And thank you very much, everyone. It's been a very interesting discussion. Thank you. And only the Foreign Minister is drawing me away. A very specific invitation to go and discuss all sorts of issues. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
The Foreign Minister. I was also PR in New York.
Oh, was he? Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, look forward to seeing this.
Thank you.
There's some reading material in that.
Ooh, lovely. Shall I take that one as well?
As you travel in your car.
Lovely. Thank you.
There's a current copy of that.
Someone take this
I have
something. Okay. See you tonight.
Yeah. Thank you very much. See you this evening. Yeah, thank you very much.
MC will announce for the others something.
Nabila. Hello, is Nabila here? Yeah. So
Okay.
I think
handing over to the MC now. Thank you very much. Very good. Well, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I thought we had a tremendous conversation. This was very rich. This was really very rich. We just 3 days ago I hosted the Russian ambassador in Singapore. I must tell you that in many ways this was even richer. You see, it was very succinct, and the pressure of time was a very good thing. It was all on us. Now, there were several elements that came up. Primarily, I was struck by this tertiary education and the idea of having British institutions in Bangladesh participate. As you know, we do it in Singapore. We have the Yale NUS University in Singapore. I was in Doha, Qatar, some years ago. In Doha, there is a huge university complex now. They are beginning to do it in Pakistan. So this is a very, very interesting area. The other point I thought was some kind of a market access understanding in whatever the situation is, whether Britain leaves the Union or not. Some kind of a understanding would be necessary, and that was the point made about. Now, this is an area in which it's true that my own institute in Singapore is showing some interest. We are working with colleagues in Australia, which is, of course, as you can imagine, very interested, and Canada. You did mention the okay. I mean, it's true that Australia, Canada, now in hand in hand with Singapore, are looking at what can be done with the Commonwealth. We accept the position that Commonwealth is no longer a British responsibility, which is why I made this very brief intervention as you spoke. Oh yeah. I'll give it the scope to this thing. And in fact, every other point raised was very important. The kind of business thing Rubana raised about the measures. We hope she'll be in a position to take stronger measures from a position of authority from day after tomorrow. Anyway, so all these have been very good discussions. I think we might continue for a while. If you wish to make still your interventions, we could. The whole idea of these Cosmos efforts it's a discussion among participants. The speaker kicks off the discussion, and then there's a discussion among participants, and we want to take advantage of the kind of intellect we have around this table in order to profit from it, all of us. Yes, so the floor is still open. Does anybody want to say anything? Yes, yes, Ambassador Tufail Karim Haider. Okay. Ambassador Tufail Karim Haider, and then of course Mr. Khan. Yeah, Tufail.
Morning, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, this is outside the ambit of main discussion, but it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
And I thought a few points should have been raised. It sounds a bit selfish on our part, but you see, number one, the visa charges for UK, for Bangladeshis, is probably one of the highest in the world, or the highest. I myself have been recently fallen a victim. I paid 1,10,000 to get 10 years visa. That's probably highest. And actually, I was excited and angry when they charged 50,000 for 2 years. I said, why not 10 years? And they said, 10-year visa. Yeah, they have provision for 1 year, 2 year, and it goes here. I paid 110,000 for UK visa. A person, I mean, I think it's regardless of my age or whatever. This.
I wasn't referring to you.
I'm referring to my age in terms of money I spent. Anyway, but this, I thought this is exorbitant. I wanted to ask him, though, opportunity didn't arise, is it a Bangladesh-specific rule, or is it a bunches some developing countries together? I'm sure they don't charge so high as they do from Bangladeshis. So I want some clarification on that. Anyway, nevertheless, we'll find the clarification sometime. And second point, the second point I think is that regardless of the outcome of Brexit, is the overall relationship, economic, political, trade, whatever, the overall package of relationship, the pattern of relationship, a template that has developed, how it be impacted by the result of Brexit one way or the other. But that people have been wondering about it, because I'm sure the High Commission also doesn't know exactly, and they haven't got down to that homework. I think only after the Brexit or whatever happens, they will take a breather, and then they'll reassess their relationship in overall context. So that's all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Just one point I want to make, just to support was Professor Selina Mohsin had said that the UK had started ignoring the Commonwealth after she joined the European Union. As a student, I felt that when we were in London. So I think it's to UK's interest to re-engage with the Commonwealth. And they have a business council in the UK. If they're serious, they should have national councils, Commonwealth councils, where the ABC countries, Australia, Britain, Canada, and now Singapore, should play a leading role, so that businesses and trade and investment can flow and the networking can take place between businesses. Thank you.
I think that was a very good point. What I propose to do is write a letter to the High Commissioner there, wherein anything that comes up during this discussion, I will insert it as a point that which were made after his departure. It would be perfectly in order to do that. You wanted to say something, Sabrina?
Thank you.
Yeah, Major.
Can I just point out that in the Australia CHOGM in 2014, the Eminent Persons Group gave 120 recommendations, out of which some of them were very critical. And that included, as Mr. Salahuddin Asim Khan said, UK forum of business forum in different countries, and also much more high profile of the Commonwealth through greater interactions, because now if you look at the textbooks of the schools, you will find pages and pages on the United Nations, but not a single page on the Commonwealth. If you ask students what is the Commonwealth, they did not know. So this is something which Britain, if they create a relationship close and request the government that let the Commonwealth, people only remember Commonwealth Games. Let the Commonwealth, various institutes and CFTC, technical assistance, and Commonwealth scholarships, and teachers for secondary education, all the proposals that were given by the eminent persons group, you can ask Farooq Subhan, he'll tell you, should be followed, then the Commonwealth would be such a vibrant organization, I cannot tell you.
Yeah, that's true. Mr. Inam Chaudhary. Yeah.
Well, since you are going to write a letter to the British High Commissioner, summarizing the discussions that would take place after his departure, I'd like to draw the attention of the British government about the role, the role that they have and should be having in resolving some of the issues of the subcontinent, as well as that of the Rohingyas. Now, see, the main thing arose out of Rohingyas not being listed as a native indigenous tribe, or for that matter, you might call the population of Burma, Union of Burma. As you know, as we all know, historically, Arakan was an independent country, Arakan, and then Akyab was the capital, and then they had independent relationship. When the British came, the Akyab joined the Union of Burma, and Akyab was taken in. As you recall, the king of Burma was deported to Mumbai, and the Mughal, the last emperor of the Mughal dynasty, Bahadur Shah Zafar, was sent to Yangon. Now, the point is that when in 1948, in January, when Bajau Aung San was killed, along with his 18 colleagues, that was a time when they were finalizing on the constitution of the Union of Burma. The AFPFL, the Anti-Fascist People Freedom League, which led the independence movement of Burma, that had very much Arakani's presence there. And it was decided that Arakan was jointly forming the Union of Burma. That was the time. Unfortunately, when the British left, you see, they listed some of the tribes, and the Arakanis were not included in that. It was said that time that perhaps, I'm not very sure, but one explanation was given that Arakanis are not really a tribe, they are, normal residents. Now, the point is raised that sometimes that why the Arakanis had migrated to Arakan from, say, the erstwhile East Pakistan or India. That's not actually the effect. The point is that people have been living in that country. People in Chittagong have been living there in Chittagong. People in Sylhet have been living in Sylhet, and Dinajpur have been living in Dinajpur. It was just like that. And those two subdivisions of Butidong and Mangdo, you see, they were very much there. And if you recall, there was a time when there was a very active Pakistani presence in Akyab. There was a vice consul who led a very, very important role. And Pakistan Foreign Office also appointed very bright officers there, as you Rashid Chaudhry, Ataul Karim, and Murad Khairi, all these, they were all there posted. It's because of the importance that was being given there. And during the Pakistani days, it was understood that Burma would be recognizing the special status of Arakan as an inseparable part of the Union of Burma. Now that has been completely forgotten. In the 80s, you see this, we all know the story, how it started happening. And this hate campaign, as you know, also had started against the Rohingyas. It was a very systematic move taken in. And after the, you see, they had this option in the Union of Burma, the Independence Act, that in 10 years' time, after 48, the the constituent units would be, there will be referendum, and where they'll be given this option of opting out of Union of Burma. And that is one of the main reasons why the army came in 1958, saying that the existence of Union Burma is at stake, because if the given option, the Shan and the Karens and the Chins would perhaps be going out. And that is why it was not given, and the army took over, and there was a general sort of support from the Burmans and others as well, in order to maintain the integrity of the Union of Burma. Now this is a point that has to be realized, and the British government have to take up pages from history and instill this in the consultative process, the discussions, the negotiations, that this was something which was not done, and this has to be rectified. Similarly, as you see, I mean, there are other places where the British have left in the subcontinent itself. Mamata Banerjee, the Chief Minister of West Bengal, 3 days ago, it came out in the local papers also. She said that she can play an important role in in solving the Kashmir issue. And he said that when given the responsibility, and I hope the British government will cooperate with me. This is the earlier statement she made. I don't really know, there must be some internal reasons why she has taken up this issue so boldly just before the elections. But the fact remains that this issue, the Kashmir issue, arose out of the very uncertain, let's say, conditions that were actually there in the post-47, subcontinent. There was a time when there's one single, General Okhilek was the chief of staff of both Pakistan and India, and the whole thing started thereof. So there also, besides the referendum and the resolutions of plebiscite which was there in the United Nations, British government have to play a role, and she urged upon the British government to remember those and come and play their role. So I think these are important things where the vestiges of the imperial legacies are there, and I think it is time that we could remind the British government of their responsibility in trying to solve these issues. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Salahuddin, no, okay. Yeah, Zahir, yeah.
This is a suggestion for the future, really, for Cosmos, of which I am a part also. I think in such dialogues, I've been noticing that we concentrate too much on the Foreign Office and invite the Foreign Secretary particularly. But I think in today's case, he is in income, so there is nobody from the Foreign Office. So I request that the desk officer should also be invited in such occasions from the Foreign Office. So in case he's not there, the desk officer can fill in the gap. Besides this, I think we need to invite other relevant ministries. At least senior level is difficult, at least at Joint Secretary and Deputy Secretary level, so that they could also take up the points that we raised today and pursue them with the British High Commission and British government. So I have seen this gap not only here, I have seen this gap also BISS forum also. We find that there's very, the government is not representative in these dialogues and they have less presence and all this. So this is a suggestion from my side.
Yeah, thank you. No, just quickly to answer that question. Today, accidentally what happened was, because he saw the Prime Minister day before yesterday, by protocol, this thing, today it is his turn to see the Foreign Minister. Therefore, the relevant officers of the Foreign Office who deal with Britain have to be in the Foreign Office at 11 o'clock. So, yeah, he went to the Foreign Office then. That is why they could not be here. The nature of course, this Ambassador's Lecture Series is, well, also to naturally relate to the government, but to have the ideas from the thought leaders in the community as well. So we place as much value stored by other people coming and joining these discussions. I just wanted to, explain the Brexit imbroglio a little bit, as why the relevance, etc. You see, there right now the reason, as some of you know, but it may not be absolutely clear to you, there are three reasons for why it's stuck. One is the position of the Europeans who are already in England, already in Britain. What is to be done with regard to them? You mentioned costs for education and all that. That is also a very, very major aspect of this. There are Europeans in England, vice versa, of course, but what happens to those populations? Number two would be what happens to Ireland? because, as you know, the Republic of Ireland is a part of European Union. So if Britain pulls out, then Northern Ireland pulls out of the European Union, and the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, which for the last, since 1973, which was soft, and everybody liked that. It's like Shilchar and Sylhet having soft borders. But now this border will be hardened, and this is what the Irish may not like, and therefore, and this is a huge challenge for the Tory party in particular, therefore this could revive the whole Irish issue in Britain. So that's the third problem is of course is financial, the kind of money that Britain has to continue to pay until the final exit occurs. Along with it comes the question of elections to the European Parliament. If Britain goes after the 22nd of May, then the elections take place on 22nd of May. Britain will have to field candidates for European. Normally, you might think that it's not a difficult thing. Why not field candidates? Why not give 100 MPs some what's it called, nomination, which itself resolves some problems as we see in our countries. But the problem will be that it will open up the whole question of whether to join or rejoin or come out of the European Union. The reason why Britain today finds it very difficult to come out of the European Union because the Tory party, which is almost half of Britain, is committed to it. So these are very complex. Of course, we have to evolve a new kind of relationship with the UK, also for Europe, after this change occurs. Commonwealth. You see, the thing about Commonwealth, and of course the beauty of the Commonwealth in many ways is the weakness today. It's a very ironic thing to say. The Commonwealth survives because it's a weak organization. If it was a strong organization, the Commonwealth would not have survived the republic status of India in 1950. When India became a republic in 50, the big question was whether India can be a Commonwealth country, because Commonwealth was a bit of a transformation of the old British Empire, and the countries were not necessarily entirely sovereign in a technical sense. The Prime Minister was still appointed by the Queen. So India was the first country which became a sovereign country. So today's Commonwealth is a Commonwealth of sovereign states. And per se, except for the fact that, of course, the office is in London, the role of Britain has diminished to that extent. What High Commissioner is saying as of 2018, foreseeing the Brexit thing, they will be trying to almost revamp the Commonwealth, what they call the new relationship within the Anglosphere. Anglosphere is the English-speaking countries. Here the problem again is it includes America as an English-speaking country. I mean, many of you may not actually believe, but Americans do speak English. But you see, so here we have another major problem which would not have. Huh? Yes, or except that Oscar Wilde also said England and America have everything in common except, of course, the language. Okay, so that is what the broad situation is. I mean, sort of a little explanation of the current issues that Britain faces, and almost as a corollary, so do us, or we all. So is there any other points that, yes, Mr. Junaid Chaudhry. I thought you had taken a vow of silence today, so you didn't actually, no. If there is a microphone, why not? I mean, it will amplify your voice. Not the points you make, though.
Junaid Chaudhry, and I don't know how to describe myself. I'm sort of a man about town again.
Man about?
Town. Or
something. Man about town.
Okay. Now,
there are other descriptions, but I will not disclose.
So, now taking point from what General Zahir said, and also Mr. Khan, about education, having, I mean, he mentioned about the cost of undergraduate studies in UK, and he mentioned about bringing in campus, overseas campus for this thing. But there has been some mess up. I'm not familiar with the education system or what's happening, but a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, there were people paying huge amounts of money to go to, not that huge though, but which they could afford. And that they went there and they found that the college is in a tea shop or something in East London. It's only signboard only, you see. A lot of them, they went there and then they became illegal immigrants, you see, suffering and all that. So they were cheated this thing. And this thing can happen in Malaysia. I mean, people have gone to Malaysia and found that it's only signboard. But that such thing should happen in London, it's surprising, you see. And I think they're trying to bring it under control. The other thing is having offshore campuses. I think already there are some arrangements whereby children here can get degrees from UK universities. I don't know how it happens and what is the quality. For instance, just opposite my house, on the other side of the street, there was a big signboard for many years, and it said Lincoln's Inn. So I thought, I mean, if my grandson has to become a barrister, he doesn't have to go to London, he can just cross the street. But it's happening. So I think it should be looked into. I mean, it spoils the name of UK as a center of education and all that. Gives a big name and people suffer, you see. The unscrupulous activities. Okay, thank you.
It's not easy to relocate universities from these countries. I mean, especially renowned universities to places where they are not absolutely certain there will not be decline in quality of education if that were to happen. You see, we like to believe that Singapore is the intellectual hub of Asia, etc. But do you know that there are only 3 universities in Singapore? You see, so there has been a huge proliferation of these universities, hence the signboards and no students and perhaps a vice chancellor only for the job, etc. So now I was a little indirectly involved with the negotiations with Yale University and the National University of Singapore, largely because the director of ISAS became the president of Yale. This went on for years, the negotiations. Now, the quality of Singapore education is very, very high. It's an extremely competitive society. People just live to learn, you see, so to say. Even then, there were some other worries whether the ambience of freedom and all that kind of thing, of deliberations, discussions, will be there in Singapore when Yale comes, as there is in Yale America. All these things were called into question. Now, it would be very difficult to say have a university of Oxford in Dhaka, and then you suddenly find that the quality is deteriorated. I mean, and no university worth its name would sacrifice its reputation just for 30 pieces of silver, as we say. I mean, just to get some money. So that is a big problem. But there are ways and ways of getting around it. Like in India, for instance, there are thousands of universities, hundreds of universities, but not one of them is a quality university, even by Asian standards. Except the institutes of IITs, etc. So that is the big problem. But what he has observed and what is clearly evident is that we have a large supply of very qualified manpower, you see, or woman power, or whatever, it's a youth power. And there has to be some modality through which they can become more informed about the world. I mean, whether through this kind of a correspondence university. Nowadays, of course, open universities are becoming also popular because you just don't need correspond. You also can speak on through technology. So that will improve. But these are some things that we can discuss and talk about. Okay, I mean,
I think would you like to speak? She's a teacher.
I've been invited.
Yes.
I'm Dr. Catherine Lee. I'm the Director of the Office of External Affairs at North-South University. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. As I listened to the discussion, one thing came to my mind when I thought of a paper that has just recently been written, a master's thesis by one of my students. She looked at the situation of outgoing laborers, especially to the Middle East or Malaysia, and interviewed them before they left, and then interviewed people coming back, literally at the airport. She took interviews, people going, others coming back. And she was interested in knowing what kind of training they had had before they left for their assignments. And lots of stories about the agents and the problems that they had with agents before they left. But maybe some of them had some skills training, very minimal skills training, but none of them had English language training. And all of them were very handicapped by this deficit when they got to wherever they were going, to the host countries. They could not do the simplest of things, open up a bank account, negotiate their salary for an increment, even go shopping. So her conclusion in doing the master's thesis was some kind of a course to be set up for these individuals, and there are hundreds of thousands of them from Bangladesh going around the world, to give them this very basic requirement to be able to communicate in English sufficiently to survive wherever they're going. So maybe the UK is not thinking about bringing unskilled laborers to the UK, but maybe the British Council could expand its repertoire of services offered to maybe partner with BRAC. I know that BRAC NGO does some skills training for electricians and tailors and other kinds of basic skills, but I think English must be included in this skills development training moving forward. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Since I stay 4+ months in England, I watch a lot of things. The point the gentleman made here about that students went to England, found themselves on top of a shop, a university. That happened, and that was a scam, and which the British government, as soon as they realized, stopped it. So now when you go to Britain to study, you have to go through the proper procedure. So just that scam caused 10,000 students to become just homeless and sitting on the streets. And I've seen many of them. I've spoken to them. And like we have some institutions here which say they are universities. And the University Grants Commission's chairman told me that there are about 40 to 50 scam universities in Bangladesh. So these things happen. It was unfortunate, and it has been stopped. Thank you.
Yeah. No, Zaid Bhai, I really wanted to thank you for suggesting. In fact, we need to sort of review our guest lists, and that's an ongoing effort from our end, but I really take note of what you just said. So we will be having a master list for each and every kind of event. So that's really, but I was thinking that when you took the microphone, that you would discuss something about the defense studies or defense, training. But I'm surprised that you didn't mention that, between United Kingdom and Bangladesh. So, do you want to?
In fact, we have a very good defense cooperation and training cooperation with UK. This has been since our independence. Few of the countries we are indebted to in this area one is I would say UK, another is China, then come United States, and also India. That we had a elaborate defense training cooperation and that sort of thing. So every year, many officers from Bangladesh, in fact, go to UK in various defense institutions. But in about 10 years back, it declined to some extent. But now again, it has risen. And right now, when I went to our CDS, we used to have once in a while vacancy. But now we have one every year. But on the other hand, India always had continuous, Pakistan always had that. So things have improved with UK. The problem is about hardware and others, because UK hardware and others are expensive. So we can't really afford. But then Bangladesh government has now reviewed its policy, especially because of the low quality things that we got from some of the Asian sources. I've not mentioned the names to embarrass them. So now we are also looking towards Europe and others. So in that, UK also features prominently. So our relation is good, but as we said, that this is not so much highlighted and talked about, but then it's a good relation.
But it's just another, like you went to King's, for instance. I mean, this is what, you got the software education, really. I mean, what they did was to train the intellect and mind, and thereafter the general takes command. But the recognition of the British for our armies, etc., is something that that is also responsible for where we are today. You talk to peacekeeping. We've always talked of peacekeeping. You know, when we first launched the peacekeeping programs in the late 80s, it was an Englishman called Marek Golding who was Under Secretary General, and he used to talk of the Bengal Lancers and all that sort of thing. And he was shocked to learn that not only that there are no Bengal Lancers were disbanded in the late 1890s, there is no Bengali regiment in the Indian Army. You see, which is very surprising. I mean, the Indian Army doesn't have a Bengal regiment, though there are about 6,000 recruits from Bengal into the army every year. So, but you see, a lot of this strategic tactical training we can still do with England, and this is something which is why I talked of the Asia Pacific milieu. The maritime side, you see. So there are areas in which we can send senior officers, etc. We can, and we have the quality officers to profit from that kind of exposure. You see, in tactics, in strategy, in war fighting, gaming, etc. Yeah.
I think UK nowadays have a severe problem of funding, really, in this.
Funding is a problem.
Yeah, funding is a problem now with UK, but the courses I did, except RCDS, we literally stopped. I can say that here. The scholarship was so small, but then this has been filled in by United States now. When I was Director of Military Training, we made a switch for this sort of training.
Yeah.
And now you'll be glad to know that I went to Harvard also for a short course. And many officers of Bangladeshi Army goes to Harvard for a short course in the US. These are totally funded by US Pacific Command. And US Pacific Command has a specific Title 10 funding which allows them to really take a lot of people in seminars and small short exposure courses and all these things. I think this is one of the area our Foreign Office and our Defense Ministry could also talk to our UK friends, really, to open these slots, really.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, Zaid, you just touched on this topic that I was hoping that you would do. But may I also invite Shamail, because you studied in London, and I was hoping that you will make some comments because you belong to the new generation.
He'll make them now.
And then I would like to request my teacher, Professor Sakhautasen, sir. Yes, Sakhautasen Khan. And my teacher, I'm very happy to see you, and I hope you will also make some comments. So Shamail, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Shamail Hassan. I'm the Director of Marketing of Cosmos Energy Services. So, like Mr. Khan mentioned, I'm actually a big fan of the UK because I've done my higher studies. I've done my bachelor's and master's from there. So I just want to add to one thing Mr. General Zahir was saying, that about the rise in the high cost for students, because I was there. And it was a big problem at that time, but I think now it's becoming a similar case for the UK and the EU students as well, that the cost has increased. But one thing which was actually I want to highlight is the post-study work visa. When I was there, at that time the UK had closed the doors for international students who were studying there. There was no post-study work visa, so couldn't apply for an internship. So students like us, when we are going abroad to study, we have the hope that we get at least a span of at least 1 year or 2 years to apply for an internship, and we can gain some experience. I think the UK is now doing that. I think they're open for 6 months, so but it would be helpful that if they could do at least for 1 year or 2 years, it will help the international student to get some exposure in the international world as well. Thank you.
Mr. Sakat Khan.
They, yeah, after 2 years, right.
Yeah, of course. Is there some recording system? Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah, okay, but you need to speak into the microphone to be recorded, of course. Okay, no, Professor Sakhawat wanted to. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a few points because I've been listening to everybody. Number one point regarding how the whole relationship between Bangladesh and UK. Like when we went to schools here, most of the schools, the private local schools, are British educated. They have the O levels, A levels as the curriculum. And the quality of education, even from when we were there, when we were in school, has dropped considerably. So I would request the UK, of course the ambassador is not here, but if there could be notes, that the role of the British Council can be strengthened. It cannot just be there for you to go and take your exams and use the library. If they can send some trained teachers or trainers to train our teachers in all these private schools, because they're the ones that are actually going abroad to UK, to USA for higher studies. And we're talking about the premium level schools here. And they don't have the basic knowledge of opening up a bank account, because these are logic, these are little things that makes a huge difference when you go there. How to negotiate, how to have confidence, how to have willpower, how to have grit. Because the education system here is all about memorization. If your memorization of history, geography, even the O-level scriptures is not 100% as per textbook, you're going to get a lower mark. And the teachers do not encourage critical thinking, critical ability. They will always be given a topic to write about, and that's the topic you have to write about. There's no, why would I write about that? There's no questioning. If you question, it's not encouraged upon. So those kind of learning, even in UK, doesn't happen, even with the British curriculum. It's the teaching style and the teaching skills that we need to improve if we were to cater to that 135 million people under the age of 35 who will be looking for jobs, who will be upselling or upskilling. So if the basic foundation is weak, you can go to the best schools, you can get the best job, you won't have the basics right. So if we don't get the basics right, maybe the Commonwealth, the British Council, other institution needs to play a role, because the teachers lack the basic training, number one point. Number two is Bangladesh. Slowly you will see, with the whole Silicon Valley being really big, with the startup community, has already become, starting to become. You have Patao, who got a $10 million fund, and it's a $100 million company. You have Bikash, who got the $1 million fund from Bill Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda, again a US company. And they do 1,000 crores a day of transaction. I can't even do the math in times 30 times 12. So, and then we have Shahoj, another Asian company, has given them $15 million fund. And they're again a ride-sharing, service-oriented startup. And these are companies that are giving Uber really a challenging time, a global company. Yes, we don't have Netflix. Maybe we could create our own content, given the funding that is required. I would suggest the UK also to provide we don't have any seed money coming in. It's like who you know. Because people knew the Melinda and the Bill Gates, but somebody like us who may have the great idea, we may have the skill, we may have the people here because it's a young, vibrant community. We can do it, but we don't have the fund to start something. We have to have our own savings and create a minimum viable product before the UK or somebody can notice us, because the relationship is not there one-to-one. So if there was an entity, a funding for like an accelerate program where the UK can set up something here and let the startups and the entrepreneurs pitch their ideas, pitch their product, pitch their service, and kind of have an open forum where this dialogue can happen for everybody to learn and grow. And of course, it doesn't have to be funding all the time. You're also building life experiences, you're building life skills, confidence on how to present in front of all these different global important personalities. So I think that kind of platform from UK as well as Europe as well as USA, not just UK, we can create something like that where, you know, the young people can take the challenge, can take the risk, can actually feel that they can own something with or without funding just to provide their idea. And there could be collaboration, there could be partnership, there could be, you know, ideas exchanging and flows. That kind of platform is very much needed because right now it's a vacuum for the startup world. And I come from the startup world.
Yeah.
Very well spoken.
Very good.
Very well spoken, and as a former teacher and a professor, I will totally agree with you. That's why I was trying to say that one aspect of the Commonwealth was to send teachers to various countries to show them how to teach English, mathematics, other subjects. But because the funding has been shrunk to such an extent that these things are not being done, that is why I was requesting the High Commissioner that let the Commonwealth Secretariat be as vibrant as it was before when I was working there, so that you know how to solve problems. You don't answer. You see, the most difficult examinations are those which are open book examination. Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Chaudhry will tell you that. If they say, oh, this is an open book examination, that is the most difficult because you can't write from the book. You have to invent, you have to solve the problem, you have to find, and the questions are always different. I had suggested this to Mr. Sadiq when he was Education Minister, that let us give the secondary HSC open book examination in English. And then he said, but there is a big problem. I said, what is the problem? He said, which teachers will correct these scripts? We don't have trained teachers. So you have to train teachers as well as students. And that is the reason why I was emphasizing so much on the Commonwealth's CFTC, social and economic development with other Commonwealth countries which were there before, and it's there now. Thank you.
Professor Sakhawat, you wanted to? Yeah.
Thing is this, I have some problem in hearing, so I couldn't actually follow all the discussions very keenly, rather, that I wanted to be. Anyway, so far as the cooperation between the United Nations and Bangladesh is concerned, it's very difficult to have to. Prognosis is rather difficult, always difficult. I don't know what will happen in future. And as a person, here is a man who is almost a mentor to my family, is Chaudhry, Inam Ahmed Chaudhry. He is actually, so he is a guardian to our family. I am rather afraid to say something in his front. He's a sort of a murubbi in our family. Anyway, but still, what I wanted to say, when I hear about UK and the cooperation between these two countries, as I was born in British India and was a British citizen, perhaps, I don't know though whether the citizens of colony and the citizens of the actual nation, what was the actual difference, but I claim to be a citizen of British India also, and a British citizen as well. At the same time, I was a Pakistani, and then I became a Bangladeshi, and I don't know what I will become in the future. But I will not live long, I'm sure about it. And though here is Enam Bhai is in my front, I am running it myself, and I am sure that he is much more than that. And still, you know, we have a sort of a memory about
the British period. I was a small boy at that time, and British has two sides.
Small boy where? Where?
Uh,
Kunjagai, small boy.
I was a student of Calcutta, in school when my father was serving there in Calcutta, and after partition we had to come naturally to Dhaka, and from 1947 till now I am a Dhakaiya, completely a Dhakaiya. Anyway, so actually when we think about British, they have both sides, good and bad sides. They were masters, and they had the colony, they had to rule it, and they did many things which we didn't like. But the other thing is this, that we have learned many things from them. The word democracy we have learned from them. The Congress was initiated by a British, and there were many other things I can say that the British has done, and the whole system we are running today is from British, good or bad, that is a different thing. And there are many things we sometimes say that from British period it is going on and it should be changed and all that sort of thing. All right, this is right. But still, the world is going on, and we have to change. But so far as the concern, if somebody tells me that where you want to go now, I'm an old man, I don't like traveling, but still I think I will take, the first preference will be UK. I will rather go to UK, and because of many reasons. We have learned from them there. The people are so good.
Which is why the visa fees are so high.
Now, there are other countries like India, China, and all other neighbors, very good neighbors, but still I will go a bit far. And definitely, if it is a bit to choose between the United States and UK, definitely it is UK and not the United States. That is another thing. I had went to the States, but that is a different thing. But so the UK is, I understand. They understand Bangladesh much better. I mean, as a part of India, they know. I don't know how many people are still living who once used to serve in this colony of theirs, as India. When I was there, I met some persons, very old, who told me that they were serving in the railway during British period. And I don't think much people are living now who had the direct experience of the subcontinent. But still, if they are student of history, they know about us, and they know much better about us than any other country in the world. Even in Indians, if you go beyond Asansol, they don't know what is Bangladesh, I tell you. In Pune, someone was asking me, do you write from our language from right to left? Because they thought that the script has been changed and all that sort of thing. And he didn't believe me when I said, no, we use the same script as the Calcutta people use. He didn't believe me. He was a editor of a Marathi weekly. He didn't. I was in a seminar at Pune. They call it Pune nowadays. Anyway, so this is the situation. Even the Indians do not know about about Bangladesh, the development. One of my friend, who was a part-time teacher at the Calcutta University, the journalism department, came a few days ago. He was asking me how it can happen, Sakhawat. Come on, in his own words in Bangla, many of you will understand. It কেমন করে হলো? Dhaka দেখে, he was so astonished by seeing Dhaka with all its bad sides and the pollution and the traffic jam and all that. But he was very much surprised to see Dhaka after some 25 years ago he came. So we are developing, and as a development partner, I personally will, as I have already told you, I will prefer UK. Yes, all right. And definitely the UK has many things to give to us. I understand. And I must thank them about their support to our liberation war. That is the most, I should say, thing that our students, our total population should know, that they were with us during our most difficult period. This I must say, and I can say that even BBC, I must thank BBC, and they have actually taken a role. I hope many of you know that when BBC was played in a bazaar is almost an English word nowadays, in Rajshahi, the BBC was being heard by people there in a group, and it became a routine during the, I'm saying about 71 war at that time, and people used to gather there after evening, and they used to hear the clandestine radio that was being run by our provisional government, that Shadin Bangla Bithar Kendra, and that bazaar ultimately named as BBC Bazaar. Many of them, perhaps you know, and this was a situation. So UK, all right, as I have told you, they are our friend, and hopefully they will remain our friend, in spite of many other histories, including, say, Jallianwala Bagh and all other things. Forget about those. And still, we hope to have a good friendly relations. And so far as education is concerned, as particularly I'm in the education sector, and Dhaka is being called wrongly, of course, Oxford of Bangladesh and all that. Forget about that. But still, as he was saying about the location and the shifting of universities, there were many times there was initiative to shift Dhaka University from the city center to some other place. I personally was not very enthusiastic about it, because our students are so poor. They have to earn something, living here, coaching students and all others. They used to stay in their relatives' house or somewhere. It is not possible outside. I have seen the Chittagong University. Most of people come back, and in the evening, as I was unfortunate to leave in that, I had to as a external member, I went there, and once I stayed there up to evening, and I saw that it became a completely vacant area. Nobody stays there. They goes to the Chittagong city and only stays up to at best afternoon, and then they go back. So would have happened if Dhaka University would have been shifted to, say, Jadavpur or somewhere else, or might be in Faridpur or in Gopalganj, I don't know. And if that would have happened, I am sure the Dhaka University would have lost what still it has, the role that they have played. Dhaka University is not only an educational institution; it's a political institution as well. I will have to agree to that. And the creation of the country, some of the I must say, the credit should be given to this institution. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I was not ready to.
I have enjoyed listening to you, as I have when I was a student, and a student remains a student forever.
Incidentally, should I declare that Anitullah was my student and one of the best students from my university? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. But, sir, I also wanted to add.
I'm sorry to declare that he also joined as a teacher, but he became a tycoon later, and now he has left us.
I started this magazine 35 years ago.
Thank you.
Sir, also, as you mentioned, the role of England during the liberation time, definitely BBC was our most reliable source of information. And, of course, Great Britain gave us, I would say, the biggest support, the moral support, the material support, And also, the song by Beatles, George Harrison, Bangladesh, that remains in my heart. And I fell in love with Western music by listening to Beatles and that George Harrison. I sometimes feel that should I do a museum, the Beatles museum? You know, just it's so nostalgic and so different. So finally, one fine morning, I thought that I should do a world museum of music. That's my dream. And thank you very much. I would like to thank here all the very eager participants, and I think this has turned out to be much more productive and much more enlightening than I had thought. And some good lunch is waiting for us. And Ifti Bhai, thank you for your chairmanship. And I would like to invite everybody to go up, and some just food is waiting for us, and I think we deserve some good. Thank you.
I think it was an excellent discussion. I mean, both chapters of the discussion, the first chapter and thank you. And therefore, I want to say, but there are certain points also, structural points we will take into consideration. What General Zahir was saying about the audience, etc. Today was a working day, of course. That's another issue, because we are grappling with between Saturday and a working day. And working day, people who work in offices cannot come because they need approvals to come out of offices, etc. But we will naturally calibrate our invitees according to the level of discussions. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The Commonwealth Development Corporation must have an office in Dhaka. Yes. I mean, they are ineffective because they are based in Delhi or in Bombay. If they are serious, they must have a Commonwealth Development Corporation.
Yeah, that is true. But remember one thing: anything about the Commonwealth, we have to make to the Commonwealth Secretariat, as you well know. I mean, Britain is not. Yeah. Yes, but.
Is it CFTC?
Huh? Yeah, but that is the British Minister for Commonwealth. But actually, there is nothing to prevent us from relating to the Commonwealth Secretariat directly. I mean, we can always have.
Who is the Home Secretary? Some Mr. Khan is the Home Secretary.
Javed
Khan. So hopefully he will be the next Prime Minister. He is in the short list now.
He is actually.
And in fact, my another cousin, he's the Mayor of London, another Khan. So Khans are taking over.
Khan. Then there is Imran Khan also, who's
working.
Out of camera.
Yeah.
Yes. Not to be recorded. Out of camera, I'm sure you will also say with me that there in UK there are two kinds of people. One is still very chauvinistic. The other kind is, I would say, but I found there is a subtle and a polished racism in you. That I have found, because I have been roaming with very what I would say well-to-do people because I was an officer. But when it came to mixing with people, I used to live in Wapping, which was just a border between East London and others. The English people only invited me after they came to know that I was not a resident of UK. I went on a scholarship and I was studying in King's College, London. And after that, after it took almost 3 months, after 3 months they came to know I'm an officer of Bangladesh Army and I'm doing higher studies. And only then they opened their doors to us to go and invited us for tea and others. So this is another aspect. I think this has to be also addressed. The Paki, the word Paki used there, creates often problem for Bangladeshis. And then
on that happy note, let's go and grab some good lunch. Thank you. Thank you.